Today we're talking about intermittent fasting, which modifications, which types of intermittent fasting help to lose weight, benefits, risks, and who should never ever fast intermittently. I'm Olga Onoshenko, PhD. I'm certified evidence-based nutritionist, psychotherapist, personal trainer, and I've been helping people to manage their weight for 10 years. I live and practice here in Sheffield, the United Kingdom. And before we delve into intermittent fasting, I'd like to remind you that weight loss is not about self-abuse, deprivation, strict, rigid rules, and stress. You can achieve great results with ease and enjoyment if you have a good knowledge, evidence-based information in physiology, nutrition, and psychology. Therefore, I would like to encourage you to subscribe to this channel and get your regular portion of knowledge based on the latest evidence and my 10 years of experience in the area of fitness and weight regulation. What is intermittent fasting? Let's first clarify what is fasting. Our body can exist in two states: postprandial state, after we ingested food, and fasted state that comes after absorption, after glucose level come back to the baseline. So we are either in postprandial state or in a fasted state. And intermittent fasting comes in different forms. It can be 8-16 fasting, eat for 8 hours, fast for 16. It can be 12 and 12. This also will be intermittent fasting. 5 and 2, really popular here in the UK. 5 days you eat as normal, and 2 days you are on a very low calorie diet from 500 to 800 calories. Alternate day fasting. So you eat on Monday, fast on Tuesday, eat on Wednesday, fast on Thursday, and so on. And we can have fasting mimicking diets, where we eat so little calories that it counts as fasting. And there is also such cool thing as protein sparing modified fasting. So modified fasting means that we do eat, but just a little bit, so that it still can count as fasting. And fasting was so popular because it does have a lot of benefits. It improves your gut microbiome. It reduces pathogenic bacteria. It increases good bacteria, such as Akkermansia. It improves diversity of microbiome, which is really good for your gut. It improves mucus layer. It strengthens gut lining. Intermittent fasting improves your metabolic health. It lowers blood pressure if you have problematic one. It lowers bad cholesterol. It improves insulin sensitivity. It improves glucose tolerance. Intermittent fasting helps to regulate appetite. What are the mechanisms? We can only guess. Well, it will depend on who you are, what you do, what you eat, but it's very likely that at some point in our fasting we will get ketones. How will it happen? We will not have enough glucose, and while muscles can use fat for energy, our brain cannot, and our body releases ketones, and ketones have appetite blunting effect. There is also a hypothesis that intermittent fasting may help with leptin resistance. So if you're very overweight, chances are you're leptin resistant. So you have a lot of leptin, and leptin is satiety hormone in your blood, but your brain does not read it as I am satiated. It ignores all the leptin. So fasting helps your brain to recognize leptin. It also may help to tolerate better the waves of ghrelin, hunger hormone. So it's sort of easier to stick to calorie deficit, which we'll talk about a little bit later, while using intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting can improve brain function. It has neuroprotective effects, especially when we talk about age-related brain deterioration. And finally, there is some data that gives us hope that fasting may improve longevity. However, all the research currently is in mice, and we know that research in mice very rarely extrapolates to humans. So I listed most of the benefits of intermittent fasting and explained the mechanisms. But do you know one common denominator in all of these mechanisms? Fasting helps to create energy deficit. So when we compare fasting, or in research it is called intermittent energy restriction, and continuous energy restriction, we see no differences in the benefits. So let's take overweight men, divide them into two groups. One group will be eating 1600 calories between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. 8-hour eating window. Other group will be eating this 1600 calories, 400 calories at 8, 400 calories at 12 noon, 400 calories at 4 p.m. and 400 calories at 8 p.m. Both groups will lose weight because both groups will be in energy deficit. Both groups will improve their gut health, their metabolic markers, their cognitive function, and chances are insulin levels will be a little bit lower in those who fasted, but the statistical significance will be there, but not clinical significance. It means that although we can say that yes, insulin is lower in those who fasted compared to those who didn't fast. Yes, intermittent fasting is great, but the difference will be so small that it doesn't matter at all. It will be 0.1 micro something. No clinical significance whatsoever. So, intermittent fasting, so far, at the point of 2025, today is March, has no additional benefits as compared to calorie restriction. But intermittent fasting is a tremendous tool to get into calorie deficit, into this amazing therapeutic, longevity and health promoting calorie deficit. Energy restriction, in other words. How? Well, first, it's super easy. The rules are simple. You eat at this time and you don't eat at that time. If I have a client who gives no shit about what is carbs, what is protein, and says, just make me lose weight, I tell him, do not eat after 4 p.m. Eat as usual, here is what you should eat, after 4 p.m. you don't. This client cuts his overeating at dinner, his after dinner snacks, and of course, he or she will lose weight. But there are not so many people like this, right? If only restriction was so easy. But it does simplify decision making. You have to follow very simple rules. It's a no-brainer, and you still have a lot of food choice during your eating window. So it's sort of restrictive, but not so restrictive. Many people love intermittent fasting, those who tolerate hunger better. And who they are? Normally, they are men. They are those with overweight and obesity. Although some naturopathic nutritionists and doctors say that if you cannot tolerate fasting, it means you are metabolically inflexible. You cannot survive on fat metabolism. It means you cannot use fat for energy efficiently. But this is not true for those who are lean and who do not have extra weight. They may feel very uncomfortable during fasting just because they do not have anything extra. They have lower glycogen levels, they have lower fat storage, so they will just have very low energy, and this is why they will feel very uncomfortable without eating. Especially women whose organisms are very protective with the goal of saving reproductive function. I'm rather insulin sensitive, I'm rather lean, I definitely don't have metabolic syndrome, I'm definitely metabolically flexible, but I do not tolerate fasting very well. Although I do sometimes practice it on a good day when I feel like I can do it. I love it. We will talk about it later. How else fasting helps us with getting into energy deficit? It helps us to understand our hunger better. Because let's be honest, most of us eat when we're not really hungry. We eat when we're peckish, when we just want to eat something, or we eat because it's time to eat. And it's not very often in our everyday life that we feel a really strong hunger, when our body really needs energy, when our stomach is ready to digest food. So intermittent fasting helps us to reconnect with our feelings of hunger and satiety. But it is not true for everyone. We'll talk a little bit later about it. And finally, just as a cherry on a cake, I never use such arguments to prove anything, but think about our evolution. How we evolved as humans. In prehistoric era, we would eat chaotically. We would have no food for a certain period of time, then we kill a mammoth and eat a lot. Then we don't have food again. Nobody woke up to a full fridge of food in prehistoric era. It doesn't mean everybody in 2025 should fast because this is how our ancestors ate. No, it is just a fun fact to think about that there is nothing terrible in fasting. Yes, we are hungrier after fasting, but we never overcompensate. There is a research that compared fasting, intermittent fasting, and then fasting without deficit. What alternate fasting without deficit means? That one day people eat 200% of their energy requirements, and the next day they eat 0, and then again 200% of their energy requirements. So they should eat 2 days of food in one day when they're not fasting, and 0 food on the day when they're fasting. And in that research, it was very hard to make people to have all the food on the non-fasting day. So we do not compensate completely for fasting. There is also research that showed that if we skip breakfast, we then are hungrier for lunch, but we will not fully compensate for breakfast. We will eat more, but not enough to have a meal worth of breakfast plus lunch calories. So we still end up with eating less if we skip breakfast. So fasting is amazing, but not for everyone. If you have problems with heart, kidneys, chronic stress, if you take certain medications that would be affected by fasting, if you are at risk of hypoglycemia, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, children, adolescent, and those at risk of sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass to the level of loss of independence, should not do intermittent fasting. Talking about sarcopenia, intermittent fasting does decrease our lean body mass. Research showed that if we restrict calories continuously versus intermittently, we would lose more muscle on intermittent calorie restriction. Intermittent. Therefore, there is protein sparing modified fasting, where we eat around 800 calories per day, a lot of protein, where we eat 800 calories per day, and this includes a lot of lean protein. So it wouldn't be bacon or chicken wings deep fried, it would be chicken breast, lean beef, it would be lower fat dairy, a little bit of vegetables that will help you both to get into calorie deficit with lower levels of hunger and preserve your muscle mass and get all the benefits of calorie deficit. And also people who have chronic stress, whose nervous system is sensitive, they should also not intermittent fast, most probably. There is an influencer who is a chiropractor, as far as I know, who says that all women in perimenopause should fast, probably on the basis of reduced insulin sensitivity during perimenopause. And this is such an overgeneralization. Lean women should not necessarily fast if they do not have a lot of fat around stomach. Women who are easily stressed, who has sensitive nervous system, should not fast. Moreover, she says you need to fast based on your period phase. do not listen to her, unsubscribe. It is not evidence-based, it is not evidence-based, we just do not have evidence. We don't know when women should fast. All women are different. They have different hormonal levels over their period. Moreover, it will differ from month to month within one woman. It will differ between women. And the reaction of women to the hormones will be also different to hormonal fluctuations. So intermittent fasting can be a good tool. Yes, it can be helpful in perimenopause. But beware of charlatans and those who generalize, who all put you into one group. Women in perimenopause, all together, let's do it all together. We're all different, even if we have so much in common. Being women, being in perimenopause. We have different fat percent, we have different nervous systems, we have different activity levels, we have different muscle masses. We have so many different things and different things going on in our life. Unsubscribe that charlatan. And my favorite topic, people with disordered eating and eating disorders should not do intermittent fasting. Yes, some people say that it helps them to regulate their eating behavior, but beware, it can only exacerbate the problem. How? First of all, intermittent fasting just increases strengthens the vicious circle of restrictions and overeating, restrictions and overeating. How? This is the same mechanism. Restriction over 16 hours. Let's imagine we take 8 and 16. Eating over 8 hours. People who are inclined to overeat will be overeating, will be binging during these 8 hours most probably. Moreover, it will keep wiring the brain into the circle. It will keep wiring the brain into this all or nothing thinking. I work so much with people on this cognitive distortion, irrational belief, all or nothing, black and white. I either eat everything or I am on a very strict diet. I either stick to my diet 100% perfectly or I binge. Because if I eat a cake, I ruined my diet, so I as well can eat another 10 pieces of cake to the level of discomfort. I'm either at my perfect weight or my weight is unacceptable. I'm either successful at dieting or I'm a loser. Such belief is very damaging for our mental health and for our behavior. It's really important to get rid of such all or nothing thinking, and it will improve your quality of life greatly. Of course, this alone will not help to regulate your eating behavior. If you suffer from overeating, from emotional eating, from stress eating, you also need to learn to self-regulate. To regulate your nervous system, to know how to deal with your emotions, with the states where you feel so bad that you need food to alleviate the suffering, or to suppress emotions, or to run away from hard feelings. And intermittent fasting will not solve this problem. It may just mask the symptoms. It will be sort of a clutch you rely on. Whereas what you need is to go to therapy and to be compassionate and curious. What's going on? What I'm running away from? What's bothering me? What's going on in my life that I have to turn to food as a coping mechanism? Same relates to keto, by the way. Keto does decrease cravings, sugar cravings, but again, it just masks the symptoms, because cravings are normal. Everybody will have cravings, and ideally we should be able to deal with cravings. And even if we give in to cravings, this should not be the end of the world. If we do not have all or nothing mindset, we will have a cookie and will not have 3 cookies. We will be satisfied and happy, and we will not blame ourselves, we will not feel guilt and shame for that bloody 1 small cookie. Or 2 or 3, that's all fine. The most important is that we do not eat beyond hunger, beyond enjoyment. We do not eat to blunt our emotion. Intermittent fasting also can you push away further from your body. I said previously in this video that it can help you to understand your hunger better, but it can have an opposite effect. It can further teach you to ignore your hunger, so that you continue not eating when you're hungry and eating when you're full, and come to a point where you're always hungry. That's because of all the restrictive dieting we're doing to ourselves. And if I'm always hungry, I cannot trust my body because it's always hungry. Because if I trust my body and eat when I'm hungry, and I'm always hungry, I will be always eating. And this is also not the way to function. This is also what we work with clients on a lot. And believe me, in most of the cases, it's possible to establish really good relationships with the body, understand its signals of satiety and hunger, and work with it. And then the body will become your friend and your guide. I don't say that you should never limit what you eat, but first we need to establish good relationships with ourselves, our body, and to reduce the significance of food. And have that famous unconditional permission to eat. It's cure it all, indeed. Intermittent fasting can further deepen your obsession with food and body, can increase the amount of intrusive thoughts about food, the amount of what dieting, nutrition, exercise, body image takes in your head, at the cost of very important things that you need to think about instead of that. Your self-realization, your relationships, your family, your career, your hobbies. So many amazing things in life that may be ignored because of obsession with food. So in case my client has problematic relationships with food, we start with structure, flexible structure. We learn to eat regularly, regular balanced meals, stop being afraid of food, stop dividing food into good and bad, and relying on this structure, we learn to self-regulate, to regulate our nervous system, calm it down without food, switch between the state of fight or flight into rest and digest, learn to identify and shut down internal critic, because one of the main reasons we are in that fight or flight mode, because internal criticism often causes a lot of stress. We may not notice it because this self-critic is so usual to us. It's intrinsic, it's always there. We always have someone negative on the background telling us that we're not good enough, that we're bad, flawed. Maybe even not telling us anything, but just looking with disgust, judging. So we learn to eat healthfully, regularly, in a balanced way. We learn to not be afraid of food. We learn to eat in moderation. We learn to eat for enjoyment and for our energy needs rather than to eat to suppress our emotions or to cope with our emotions and to make our life better. We find other ways to make our life better. So intermittent fasting or keto diet or any other diet is not the best way to solve your problems with food and body. It just puts you further away from your goal. Conclusion. Intermittent fasting can be a great to restrict calories in a healthy way, of course, if you do it from healthy psychological place. So far, we have no evidence that it is superior to simple calorie restriction. We have no evidence that intermittent calorie restriction is any better than continuous calorie restriction. And if you have problematic relationships with food and your body, let's solve it in therapy rather than another way to restrict yourself, another way to try and cope with bad relationships with food and try to gain control with even more pressure and even more stress. So I'd like to invite you to my psychotherapy sessions. I'd love you to share your experience of fasting in comments. Ask any questions. If you liked it, click like under the video. Please subscribe and I'll see you soon.